Thank you, Kim and Amy. Can we get another round of applause for them? I think it was wonderful for them to have their time to share and their thoughts to explain the things that are happening at MSU, and we are so proud to have Amy part of our team. So welcome to MSU again, Amy. Thank you again for being here to our third annual Women in Philanthropy Symposium. This has been a labor of love, as Kim had shared, for us to come together, and I'm so proud of the work that we've done as a team to host this event. Again, my name is Amy Argel, Senior Director of our Women in Philanthropy. I too am an alumni, graduate of the College of the Social Science, and excited again to be part of this university. So we're going to switch gears now and talk about our graduate program. So I am happy to introduce our panel moderator, Dr. Pero Degbovi, a proud alum, MSU alum, and the father of 3 sons who graduated from MSU. So there's a very deep green in their bloodline. Dr. Degbovi is a distinguished professor of history, vice provost of graduate and postdoctoral studies, and the dean of the graduate school at the university. Outside the classroom, Pero has authored 6 books and numerous articles and is the former editor of the Journal of African American History, the oldest and most well-respected journal focused on African American history. After beginning his career as a professor at Wayne State University, he was recruited back to MSU as a professor of the Department of History. Pero attended Kenyon College as a lacrosse star before transferring to MSU his freshman year. But that first year at Kenyon profoundly shaped his interpretation of history, a story which I hope he will share with you today. Including his days as a graduate student, he spent 3 decades at MSU educating and shaping the future for students. Please welcome Dr. Pero Degbovi to the stage.
Thank you very much, Amy, for the introduction. I really appreciate it. And apparently somebody did a little research on me to find out about my days playing lacrosse at Kenyon College. I guess I'll begin with just a brief story about that experience because I think it speaks to women in philanthropy in a different sense in terms of investing in someone's intellectual capital. As was said, I ventured to Kenyon College, stayed there for 1 year, and I just by happenstance had the opportunity to take a very intriguing history course from a visiting professor, Black woman who was on visitation from Howard University. And the course was kind of like a graduate level course in U.S. history and African American history, and my interest was piqued in this subject matter. And she sat me down at the end of the school year and told me that it might not be best for me to stay at Kenyon because they really didn't have expertise in this area that she was leaving, and that I might want to think about venturing somewhere else. And there I was, my late teens, thinking, what am I going to do? Now, I am a Michigander, so I knew the accessible Michigan State University was always admitting people on a rolling basis. And so I decided to take a leap of faith, and she told me that Michigan State would be a great place for me to go study because their U.S. history and Black history was very strong. And the rest is kind of history. It's an example of somebody mentoring me at a young age, seeing potential in me for graduate education and guiding me to East Lansing. Spartan women have played a major role in my life since my late teens. My wife, 2-time Spartan, bachelor's and master's degree in a college of education, influenced me profoundly. My mother, who received a master's degree from Michigan State, influenced me profoundly. And then there's a list of other women who are my elder who influenced me profoundly, who are Spartan affiliates and Spartans themselves. Darlene Clark Hine, Sandra Seaton, Wilma King, Geneva Smitherman, Wanda Lipscomb, Rusim Hamilton, Wilma King, Wallene Donson, Eunice Foster, Harriet McAdoo, Gloria Smith. I could go on and on. So it's my great pleasure to be here in that spirit. I want to reflect a little bit before meeting our extraordinary graduate students on graduate education here at Michigan State. The students who I'm going to be talking to today are part of that rich tradition of graduate education at our fine university that began early on in this university's history. In terms of PhD programs, those were founded during the presidency of Jonathan L. Snyder, the seventh president of Michigan State from 1896 to 1915. Graduate education, central to our identity. It's central to our mission. Oftentimes, people forget this. When we talk about students in general, we just are undergraduate centric in our discourse sometimes, when in reality, 20% of our total student population are graduate students, which means about 11,000 students here are graduate students, PhD, master's, grad professionals, certificate-seeking students, lifelong students. But I want to talk a little bit about our PhD programs in particular. 31% of our total graduate student population are doctoral students. And these doctoral students are in 100 different PhD programs in our respected university. These graduate students, these PhD students, are essential to our research, teaching, and outreach mission. They're central to our identity of what we call a Research One institution, a designation given by the Carnegie Foundation. We wouldn't be an R1 institution without our doctoral granting programs. So they're important in research. They work with professors in labs, they work on research projects with different professors, and they're teaching assistants as well and instructors of record. Many undergraduate students will oftentimes interface with teaching assistants more than they might even certain types of professors. So graduate students, PhD students are central to our teaching mission. Our PhD students are future ambassadors for this university. They're future donors. They're our future professors, our future professionals, our leaders in their careers of choice. And we have a global impact, as was referenced by the First Lady at Michigan State. Our PhD students are all over the world right now. In the last 10 years, 6,000 doctoral degrees have been granted by our university. 6,000 graduate professional degrees have been granted by our university, and more than 20,000 master's degrees. To put this into context, if we want to take pride in Michigan State University, as we need to, approximately 18% of graduate students enrolled in public universities in our state of Michigan are enrolled in programs here at Michigan State. Let's give it up for that if we can. We got to brag a little bit. The humility's good, but we have to say what we do. We have 22 top 10 graduate programs and 30 within the top 25. And according to our strategic plan, we're moving upward. Now, if we look at women in PhD programs at Michigan State, it's intriguing to recognize that more or equal number of women are PhD students, kind of in most of our colleges, except for two. In the College of Engineering, 22% of the PhD students are women. In the College of Natural Science, 45% of our PhD students are women. But in all the other colleges, it's almost equal in most cases, or even in some cases, more women are in those areas. So I want to shift now and transition into why I'm here, which is not to keep talking, but to really engage with our brilliant PhD students that we have joining us today. But before doing that, I want to underscore something, that supporting these type of students, these PhD students, is crucial. And we turn to those who can provide that type of support to help us out. When President Guskiewicz visited the graduate school on his listening tour, he asked me an interesting question. He said to me, "Pero, what would you do if you had the amount of money that amounted to 5 times your largest gift that you've been given in the grad school?" And I didn't hesitate. It was real easy. I said, I would put it towards our University Distinguished Fellowship program, which helps support the best and brightest of our graduate students and PhD students who will go on to make not only changes at Michigan State, but around the world. And so if we're thinking about giving, We can give in the cause of graduate student success, in graduate student well-being, research activities, through fellowship contributions. I see Joey Spano here who's contributed in that regard. Thank you very much. We also have dissertation completion fellowships, emergency funding, travel fellowships. There's a host of different areas that you can contribute to graduate education. To transition to the next phase, let me just borrow a quote from the Commission on the Future of Graduate Education in the United States of America. This is what they concluded about a decade ago. Quote, "The United States system of graduate education is a strategic national asset. Like all valuable assets, it must be attended to and nurtured in order to remain viable and strong," end quote. And that's something we have to keep in mind at Michigan State University as we progress on into the future during times of change, yet stability around the corner. So on that note, let me transition to the introductions of the Spartan women who we have with us today representing PhD students. I was asked before the program, how did the selection of these students take place? And I said there was a process, and it was a quite challenging process. And we have some of the best and the brightest with us today to represent that cohort. We have 3 Spartan women graduate students who are going to share more about their experiences as graduate students. So those of you, as I introduce you, please join me on the stage. And I will be sitting in the second chair right there to the left, just for reference. First, we have Ursula Aburjeli, graduated with her bachelor's in animal science from the College of Natural Science and Resources in 2020. College of Agricultural and Natural Resources in 2020. She's now a 4th-year PhD candidate and graduate research assistant studying comparative medicine and integrative biology in the College of Veterinary Medicine. Her research examines the mechanisms of fatty acid supplementation to improve dairy cow health and production during the postpartum period. Christina Hurd is a 5th-year PhD candidate in the Biochemistry and Molecular Biology program in the College of Natural Science, as well as a National Science Foundation graduate research fellow studying a key enzyme in the global nitrogen cycle. She plans on working in science policy and environmental justice after she graduates. And Emma Wabel, 3rd-year PhD candidate and graduate research assistant studying pharmacology and toxicology in the College of Osteopathic Medicine. Her research focuses on understanding how the, I hope I pronounced this right, adipokine coumarin supports healthy blood pressure and contributes to obesity-related hypertension. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Something every day within the realm of graduate education. So I have a handful of questions here, and I'll start with a handful for all of our panelists today. The first question that I have is, could you share more about why you chose Michigan State University for your graduate education?
Thank you for this introduction. I can go first. I think you touched on many of the points that I was going to talk about of why I chose MSU for my graduate program, especially in relation to research. I think one thing that we also mentioned today is MSU being a land-grant college. My research in the ag world, I really wanted a university that has a lot of opportunities for me to have hands-on experiences with the research that I do. So we're very lucky to have many farms here basically on campus. And with the research that I do with the dairy cows, I do a lot of my work in the lab, but I also get to do some hands-on research at the farms, which not many universities have that. The other thing that drew me to MSU was the collaboration between departments. I did my undergrad here in animal science. Now I'm in the College of Vet Med, and we do collaborate a lot. That opens a lot of opportunities for new research, for new ideas, for bigger projects. Although my research is very specific, I collaborate with many different labs within the College of Vet Med, but also in the animal science department to do our big projects that one person or one lab cannot do by themselves. The other thing that also kind of in relation to the collaborations is the program that I chose, the comparative medicine and integrative biology. It's an interdisciplinary program. We have students across the whole campus from different departments. We have students doing research related to animals, like how I do. We have students doing research related to human health or environment. And we do collaborate a lot too. And we learn a lot from each other through different seminars, events, symposiums when we get together. So what I feel like when I'm doing my graduate program now, I'm not just focusing on one thing. I'm not just learning one thing. I'm learning so much by interacting with these people and interacting with different labs and different programs.
Hi, I'm Christina. Thank you for having me today. And I chose MSU for a very specific reason. MSU is one of the top colleges in the country for plant science studies. And that's actually already come up today with the earlier questions for Amy. And I'm actually originally from Texas, but I had heard about MSU's plant science for graduate school and for undergrad. And I was like, sorry, Mom, I have to move across the country now. And it's incredible when you're applying to grad school, they have these recruitment weekends where they come in, they kind of vet you, but you really get to vet the school as well. And so I had applied to several programs, and every single other plant science program I went to, I was like, did you apply to MSU? And they're like, oh yeah, I applied to MSU. So, and showing up, like, it is not disappointed. And what's incredible is the specific program I came in under is an umbrella program, which allows you to, alternate through like 3 or 4 different labs. You can like try them out for several months, make sure they're a good fit with the research, with the mentor, and then you get to pick whatever lab you want to join, and then you also declare what department you want to join. So you are not being forced to pigeonhole into a program before you even really know what it's about, especially for people who are not originally from the area and so are still trying to get, their sea legs underneath them. It's been a really, really welcoming and accepting experience.
My name's Emma. Oh, there we go. So my name's Emma. Thank you again for having us here. So again, I chose MSU again for quite a specific reason. So I was coming straight from my undergraduate education. I was a bit intimidated by the idea of a PhD. I knew I wanted it, and I knew I'd want to go into higher education, but I was standing up against applicants who had master's degrees and industry experience, and I had just gotten an undergrad degree. So I was from Michigan my whole life, and I knew I wanted to stay close to my family and in an environment that really let me explore my options. Like Christina said with our rotational program, kind of getting a chance to try out a couple labs and a couple different projects before I really dove into something for my PhD. And I remember during the interview process just being so welcomed at MSU. It felt like I could survive here. And I can't say that for every place I interviewed at. I remember after the end of our recruitment weekend, we'd had a 10-hour day of online interviews because this was during COVID. And so we're all sitting brain dead at the computer, and then current graduate students were sitting there and talking, and you could just tell they were friends. They supported each other. They wanted to help each other. And I got that impression from both the students and the PhD professors as well. And I knew if I was going to go anywhere and I was going to make it in a PhD program, this is where I would be. So I'm happy to say 3 years in, I didn't judge wrong, and it's been really, really great.
Thank you. As a little icebreaker, what are your favorite spots or favorite spot on our beautiful campus?
MSU Dairy Store. The dairy industry, but MSU Dairy Store, dairy ice cream. Good answer. If you haven't tried it, do so.
Yeah, she's right. So I guess my second favorite spot has got to be the horticulture gardens. They are stunning. If you haven't gone, you have to go. They're incredible. And a lot of those plants are annual plants. Like the students are out there, and like even some of the PIs, like every year taking care of that space and planting new species. And it's awesome, like to talk to plant science students. They're like, I'm studying that plant right there. So it's just great.
Okay, if I had to say also my second favorite, because the dairy store is quite up there, I would say the planetarium. I think it's really fun to have one right on campus. I think it's just beautiful. And sometimes they'll host free shows for the graduate students so we can go and have a little infomercial. It's just my favorite little thing to nerd out on the side.
Could you all talk a little bit about any support you've received during your journey as a graduate student here at Michigan State through scholarship, grants, or mentorship types of support?
Yeah, I can start. So this is a little longer of a story, so I'll keep the rest of my answers short, but it's just one of my favorite stories. So I alluded to earlier, when you apply to a graduate school, you come for a recruitment weekend. So the weekend for MSU was a plant science weekend, and they were vetting students to see who would get a plant science fellowship. They had a couple to hand out. And that fellowship covers a year of tuition. It gives you a livable stipend. And I think it also covered like healthcare and dental. So nothing to sneeze at. And so in order to vet you, you give a research presentation. So I was like, okay, research presentation, like for what you had done in undergrad, ready to go. I went to a different university's recruitment weekend. And like I said, I ran into a bunch of people who were also applying to MSU. And I was talking to one of the women there, and she was like, oh, like they don't want like a classic research presentation. They want to learn about who you are as a person, and then like 40% about your research. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. Like I was just going to talk about like biochemistry the whole time. So I show up to MSU. We're all sitting in this room. Everyone, I'm like somewhere in the middle. So everyone ahead of me starts giving a very classic research presentation, and I start sweating. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna start. It's my turn. I go up there. I included something like I had just started getting into knitting, and I'm like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Everyone else sounds so smart. So I get through the presentation, get through the day. I go home to the hotel room they put us up, and I cry myself to sleep that night. I was like, not only am I not getting this fellowship, I'm not getting into MSU. It's done. I'm over. Well, time goes by. Not only do I get the acceptance letter from MSU in the mail, but I get the acceptance for the plant science fellowship as well. And originally, I was thinking mean thoughts about this woman, but but I was like, oh my gosh, she helped me out. She helped me get this fellowship. And so not only was it like, this really showed me that MSU was here to fund and support the person, me as like a 3D person with all of my outside interests and values, but also that like, it was my first experience of like being so empowered and helped out by another woman who was technically my competition because she was going for the same fellowship. So it was just such a nice moment.
That's me. I can speak next on this. So I recently was able to benefit from the funding that MSU provides. So not only through things like the BMS program. So like Christina mentioned, we have this program that we've entered that's an umbrella program where we can rotate in quite a few different labs. And the allotted number of rotations is about 3 rotations. But what happens is sometimes a student doesn't always find a lab that's a fit within 3 rotations. And the nice thing here is this MSU has funding built in to support a student to do a 4th rotation, to do maybe a 5th rotation, to really get them the best chance they have to find a home here at MSU that they can do their PhD. And so I've had friends like that who, had a couple of tough rotations and didn't quite find their match, and were able to find that after a couple months with the support of MSU. And then I personally benefited a couple months ago. My age-old laptop from college died, and I could not resurrect that thing for the life of me. And I wasn't in a position to be able to afford this laptop that was directly related to the progress I could make in my research. And the graduate school was actually able to provide me funding to get a new computer through their emergency funding, like we mentioned earlier. And that's been a huge help, just directly proportional to the amount of productivity I can have in lab. And so that was a huge help to me to say, okay, my research doesn't have to halt just because this happened. I can continue, and the graduate school is going to help me do that.
I have a different experience with starting with grad school because I didn't rotate. And I think I consider myself lucky that I already knew which lab I wanted to join because I worked with that lab during undergrad. So I had a lab set. Luckily, my PI had grants funding for me, but I was set to start my PhD program in the fall or like August of 2020. And we know what happened in 2020. So in March, when everything shut down, we were at home. I didn't get a undergraduate graduation. I didn't walk in the ceremony. I I was alone. My mom wasn't around. I was only with my dad because she was stuck abroad back in my home country. And then I got an email from our program, the CMIB program, and the graduate school saying that I could potentially start my graduate program early in the summer. And that was due to funding that they had through the graduate office. So I got a fellowship. Summer of 2020, I started my graduate program. Although I wasn't on campus doing research in the lab, I still got to take 2 classes, which is huge for a graduate student to get 2 classes out of the way. So I was done with all of my classes or credit requirements during the first year and a half of my graduate program, and then the rest of it. As of right now, I'm only focusing on research and doing the work that I need to do to graduate and writing. And I actually did apply again for the summer for that same fellowship, and I got it again, luckily. But it's fortunate that I had to give it back. It's because I had applied for a federal grant that I got. So that's going to start this summer too. So there's a lot of opportunities within the program that I'm in, within the department that I'm in, but also at MSU in general. There's a lot of funds, scholarships that are available to students that they could apply for that could help them, whether it's for travels. I'm planning on applying to that actually this summer for one of the conferences that I'm going to. But it's a relief to not feel the burden of thinking of, oh, who's going to pay for this conference that I want to go to, or who's going to pay for my health insurance and all that. It's a relief to not think about those financial struggles while we do the research that we do and just focus on our projects and why we're doing our PhDs.
Thank you very much for sharing these experiences. It looks like I'm going to have some new spokespersons in the graduate school. You know, the graduate school at Michigan State takes great pride in the various professional development programs that we have, and we're recognized nationally for this. How has your journey as a doctoral student been aided by professional development opportunities, and what are your goals post-graduation?
I can start for post-graduation. I want to go into science policy, specifically water policy and environmental justice at the state level here in Michigan, and essentially trying to be that intermediary between the scientists in the lab who are doing the important work, but including a lot of unintelligible jargon, and the policymakers who need to, use that data to make informed policy. And so obviously my PI who went into academia and R1 College is not the best person to go to for policy recommendations, but he is incredibly supportive. He has supported everything I've done. He's helped me get 2 separate internships in the policy field and supports all of the extracurriculars I do outside of the lab. And I think that's very unique to MSU. I talk to students from other universities and they have to hide the fact that they don't want to go into academia after they graduate. But MSU, just about every professor I've run into supports their students whether they want to go into policy like me or industry or anything else. And so because of that, the students are really good about starting their own groups and clubs that focus on, the interests that they want to do post-graduation. And so we make our own little professional development groups. So I'm a part of 2 different policy / professional development clubs here at MSU that are all student founded and student run, and they all have to have a PI sponsor, but the PIs are good at what do you need and I'll get out of the way. So that's been really great here.
That made me think, I don't think I've told you about this before, but about a month ago I had the opportunity to go to DC through MSU actually to attend the AAAS case workshop, and it was on science policy. MSU sponsored 4 students, and I was one of them. So maybe next year you could, I'll give you some more details about that. It was an amazing opportunity. It was a 4-day workshop. We learned a ton about federal budget, funding, how just policy, how to talk about our research, how to convey our research to lay audience, how to support our research also, and defend it. And then on the last day, we got to collaborate with students from U of M, and we got to visit different senators and House representative offices and talk to them. So it was an eye-opening experience. I learned a ton from it, and it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for MSU sponsoring me to go to that workshop. I did learn, however, that I don't want to work in policy, but it was still a good learning experience. I think I'm leaning more towards industry, doing research within the industry, whether it's on the ag side, like working in an animal health or biotech company, or on the human health side. I do a lot of basic research, so my skills are widely applicable on both ends. Ideally, I would love to work in a company and do both the animal health and the human health together. But we'll see where I'll end up.
I can go third here. So in terms of career goals in the end, I want to do something, I guess my wording has always been as close to human medicine as possible. I love human medicine, but I am one of the biggest germaphobes I know, and I have no interest in actually treating patients. So
Honesty.
it is. Germs are gross. I can't. So if I can get into, this is why I really love my translational research so much, because if I can get my hands in influencing how we conduct medicine, that is so fulfilling for me. And so I'm hoping to find a career as some sort of liaison bridging clinical research that we're doing right now with medical practice and getting these translational movements that we're making in science into the bedside practice. MSU has been super supportive of this, which is, like Christina said, not common for all universities. I was a little shy to tell my professor I didn't want to go be a professor originally. And when I told her, she said, great, let's get you there. And I think that's been a really cool strength of MSU. And so one thing that I'm part of that helps kind of develop these professional skills I need in a career that I'm searching for is called the BEST program. And so Ursula and I are both in this, where a representative from the graduate school is working with us to open our eyes to other careers in science industry that we could do. So we're inviting speakers to come educate us about their career, tell us about their day-to-day. We're taking visits to industry sites and seeing how it is to work in the field itself. They're also working with us for, resume workshops, interview help, things that we can help to prep ourselves to make ourselves marketable in this field. So having kind of set in stone concrete meetings that we have to expand the skills and expand our horizons into other careers aside from academia is a really big strength of here that I've really enjoyed getting to explore.
Continuing with you, Emma, could you please speak to your experience as a woman in STEM? We know that women in STEM are underrepresented nationally. I know we're making strides at MSU, but there's still a long way to go. Would you mind reflecting on some of those experiences that you've had, please?
Of course. I've been really grateful for it. It's, as we know, being a woman in STEM is often pretty hard. And I'm grateful that it's significantly less hard than it used to be. Having men doubt your research or having somebody overshadow you or doubt you is really difficult in the field when you're already kind of struggling to believe that you yourself can accomplish this. As having someone else tell you can't is kind of hard. So I've been really grateful, especially in my own lab, as I actually am in an entirely female lab. It's a female PI, and we're all female graduate students and workers. It just happened to be this way. Which has been a really cool kind of safe space to be where we all understand it together. So kind of having this space to lift up and support one another. So when we go out into the science community and things are hard, we have this really solid foundation that I'm working from, that I know I can still do hard things and I can keep going with that. Let's see, I had something else in my notes I wanted to do. I also really liked the idea of having a female role model and seeing that representation here at MSU. We really are almost 50-50 in my department, and seeing this female representation of saying, if she can do it, I can do it too. And watching my PI do that, I think has been really cool and really inspiring for me to know, okay, if my PI can do it, I can make it out here too. And really cool to think that, like, hopefully with the mentor, the undergraduate I mentor, I want to be that for her to say, okay, if I can do it, she can do it too as well. So I think that's a really powerful thing here, and something MSU is really dedicated to doing, that I've really seen in my department and my lab specifically as a whole.
Thank you. Extension, outreach, and engagement, as we all know, is central to the DNA of our university, going back to the pre-Civil War era. Christina, you were awarded the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship in part because of your science outreach to elementary and middle school aged girls. Could you tell us more about those outreach activities, that is, encouraging women to become involved in STEM?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll go chronologically. So I was raised in the Girl Scouts. When we moved to Texas and like around middle school and there wasn't a troop for like girls my age in my neighborhood, my mom decided to become our troop leader. And so was our troop like the only troop leader in all of northern San Antonio for like the next 7 years. So thanks, Mom. And through Girl Scouts, I did so many like summer camps and day camps. And whether they were, I went to a lot of science specific ones, but even if they weren't, there was so many like nature based ones, which is why I think I got so heavily into plant sciences. I was like, this is cool. And so once I started getting into like high school, becoming like an older aged Girl Scout, I started counseling some of those day camps and summer camps. And so I got to like teach the other girls who I used to be in their spot of like, how cool is this? And what, so then I went to undergrad. I studied plant biochemistry. And for one of the summers, I was a research, undergraduate intern. There we go. That's the word. Intern for the summer in the Danforth Center in St. Louis, Missouri, if anyone's heard of it. It's a big plant science place. And for one of the weeks, they were hosting Girl Scouts to do a day camp all week to do science. And so I had never gotten to like wear the white lab coat, go like play with pipettes and colors like in a lab setting until I went to undergrad. And so it was so cool to see these like young girls, and I was like, they have no idea how special this is. Like they are just going to grow up thinking scientists are women. Like everyone teaching me as a woman, I'm a girl. And they're not gonna grow up thinking, oh, I can be a scientist like the boys. They're gonna think I can be a scientist regardless of what anyone around me is doing. And so I just thought that was so special. Girl Scouts really was, shout out to Girl Scouts in case anyone else here is a Girl Scout. Yes, it got me into science.
Thank you. So Ursula, we have something in common. I spent part of my undergraduate degree here at Michigan State and then went on to pursue graduate education here. And you've been a Spartan from undergraduate to graduate school. So could you share with us what led you to stay with Michigan State for what we could call part of your entire academic years past high school?
Yes, I truly bleed green. The first time I visited campus, I was 7 years old. I was actually, that was my first time ever visiting the United States, actually. My older brother was an undergrad here at MSU. And I remember him walking me around. It was me and my mom and him. And he was walking us around campus, showing us the river, the trees, the buildings, just everything. And it was summertime, so no undergrads were around. So for me, just looking at it, I'm like, this is a city. This is not a university. And I remember him telling me, this is going to be your school one day. Well, fast forward a couple years, like 10, 11 years. When I was in high school, I started thinking about, okay, what I want to do afterwards. Coming from a small country that most universities don't even have research opportunities, I really didn't know anything about research. But I had my brother here, and he was the one encouraging me to apply to MSU. So I did, and that was the only college I applied to. I didn't want to apply anywhere else because I didn't want to go anywhere else. That was the only, like, my dream from the 7-year-old girl's dream was to come here, and I did. And I remember my high school president or principal of my high school, when I told him about it, he told me, I don't think you're going to get in. You have good grades, but I don't think you're going to get in. It's a big university. And I said, well, this is the only option that I'm putting myself I have right now. And I did get in, and I graduated with honors during undergrad with a bachelor in animal science and a minor also. And when I graduated, I actually emailed him with pictures of me. And I told him I made it. And I told him that I got into the graduate program and that I'm pursuing my PhD. And I can't wait next year to graduate again with my PhD and send him another email and sign my email, Dr. Abouchaile. But MSU has been home away from home to me. And when I was starting to think about grad school during my senior year, I did apply to other colleges. I didn't do like what I did in high school. And actually my PI that I work with right now, he was the one that encouraged me to apply to other places and explore other programs. And one university I actually applied, got in, I went and visited, and I loved it. And I was very close to going there. But then when I was sitting back at home after I came back from that visit, I was thinking, but why leave? I have so many great memories here, and I can't wait to build more. The program that I'm in is amazing, and the research that I was going to do and I'm doing right now was just perfect, exactly what I wanted. So I decided to stay. I decided to stay home, and I love it.
Glad you made that decision. Emma, you were part of a peer mentoring program, and I believe you still are, targeting the unique challenges faced by first-year doctoral students. Could you tell us more about how networking and peer mentorship helps doctoral students succeed?
Yeah, of course. So I'm part of a student group called GRIT, which is for graduate recruitment and retention and what's it called? Initiative team, yes. One of our biggest things here is really just making sure the PhD students feel at home. So one of the things that I noticed when I applied to PhD programs and when I was coming from undergrad is I had such a loose understanding of what it really meant to get a PhD. And I think that goes with a lot of graduate students is your thesis is not quite defined. It's what you make it. And I didn't know what to make it. So coming in, I was really nervous that I wouldn't do the right things. I wouldn't be the right graduate student. And I think this is a really shared experience with a lot of graduate students who think they've somehow weaseled their way in through admissions and they're sneaking under the radar and secretly a terrible graduate student. So I think one of the really cool things about GRIT is we have something called a peer mentorship program where we pair second, third, fourth, fifth year students with incoming first year students to kind of have a mentorship paired up with set points where we're going to come together and talk with these students and really address these concerns with them. I think one of the biggest things when I was here my first year is I had another graduate student rotating with me, and having that person to bounce off with to say, are we doing this right? Are we doing okay? Was so important and so foundational to me becoming a good graduate student. And so having that upperclassman to turn to and say, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Am I doing things right? And them to turn around and say, I felt the same way and here I am and I'm okay, is really, really big and really important for those first years to kind of get comfortable with themselves and their new environments, let alone moving countries, moving states, moving cities to be here. So all this combined with a huge adjustment process, it's really nice to have somebody else as a sounding board who's been through it with you to kind of walk you through that first year. So after my first year being in the mentee in the peer mentorship program, I knew I wanted to continue along with that. So through GRIT, I've continued that through the next couple of years, and I'll continue to do that till I graduate.
Indeed, various manifestations of mentoring are crucial to graduate student success. In the graduate school, under the leadership of Vice Provost Judith Stoddard, who's with us here today, we developed guidelines for mentoring and advising for graduate students that we see as being very important. So Ursula, could we talk a little bit more about mentoring? Could you just briefly describe someone who served as a significant mentor to you at Michigan State University?
I've been lucky to say that I've had many, many mentors throughout my journey here at MSU, both in undergrad and grad school. But when I think about mentor, the first person that comes to my mind is my current mentor, my PI, my advisor, Andres Contreras. He was my mentor in undergrad too, because I worked in the lab that I'm currently in as an undergraduate research assistant. And I started off by just washing glassware. autoclaving stuff in the lab, just helping graduate students with their projects. I actually worked at 2 research labs at the same time during my senior year. And I had both mentors were just phenomenal. And I don't think I would have been here if it wasn't for them. They both encouraged me to pursue a graduate degree. When I applied to graduate school, I wanted just to do a master's because I was a little bit afraid of that commitment of 5 years. And I also was a little bit afraid, what if I don't make it? What if I don't do well in grad school? And my PI, Andres, he said, okay, you don't want to do a PhD? We can start off with a master's. And I did. My first year, I was technically a master's student. And then after about a year, we sat down together and he said, I think you're doing really well. And I don't think your project will be done by next year with all the ideas that you have. So why don't you stay for longer? And that was when we decided that I want to pursue a PhD. So I transitioned from my master's to a PhD. And he has been a great support for me. We meet every single week, he doesn't meet just with me, he meets with everyone in our lab. We have one-on-one meetings, but also lab meetings. He really sits down and asks about my personal life, my health, my mental health, my vacation days, my time off. He makes sure I'm seeing my family, I'm going out, I'm taking care of myself. If I ever feel overwhelmed or stressed about certain things related to my research or the work that I'm doing, he's the first person that says, oh, it's fine. Oh, that one assay that cost $1,000, did it work for you? That's fine. He has been amazing, and he has been the one that has been also encouraging me to seek other opportunities outside of academia, because he has noticed that maybe academia is not the right place for me. He has introduced me to many, many people. He has broadened my network, my professional network. He was actually the one encouraging me to find a summer research internship, which is not very common for graduate students to do a summer internship. But he wanted me to go out and see what's out there, to explore myself, and he always reminds me that I'm an actual person and I'm not just a tool or doing the job or doing the research. So he has been an amazing mentor for me, and I'm very grateful for him. And I consider myself very lucky to have had him as my mentor throughout the years.
That's great to hear. It sounds like your mentor has been following our guidelines. So, Christina, we've talked about the importance of mentoring, dovetailing that with the important role of women in STEM fields. How is it that you want to support the next generation of women in STEM, and how do you think others could help you in that type of cause?
Yeah, supporting the next generation of women in STEM that's like the question. Well, I feel like we as like a university, a state, a country, we do a pretty decent job of getting like elementary, middle school girls interested in science. Like I already talked about Girl Scouts and all of the opportunities through that. And then MSU itself, like just the couple of, and I'm sure there's way more that I don't even know about, but just through some of the like groups that I'm a part of, I know that the Association of Molecular Plant Science Students, it's a mouthful, hosts a Fascination of Plants Day that's like open to the like general Greater Lansing community, and is geared towards like younger students. And the graduate women in science that are very active on MSU's campus, they host Girls Math and Science Day, and so that's all middle school aged girls at like the local schools. And so I feel like there's a good, it's pretty robust at that age, but then you get older and you kind of stop seeing the women above you. And I grew up in that whole like the idea that like scientists are women, and then like coming into undergrad and grad school, it's like, where'd they go? Who are supposed to be like the mentors that I was promised my whole life. And what's really interesting is that scientists in industry have almost completely eliminated the gender pay gap. I did not know that. That's almost completely gone. And so that, I mean, you know, pay is only one indicator of a community, corporation's culture. But I feel like it's a big way to say that, like, we want you here and we support you and we are excited to work with you. So we are going to pay you what you're worth. Unfortunately, in academia across the country, the pay gap has actually widened over the past couple of years, which was shocking to hear. When we show these, you know, we show young girls, if you can see it, you can be it. And so they come in with all of this, like, almost rose-colored glasses, only to kind of have the rug pulled out of them when they get older. So I think the biggest way to support the next generation of women in science is to not just tell them, but show them through one pay that we want you here and you are valuable and we are going to pay you what you are worth. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. This question is for everyone, and if maybe in a sentence or two you can respond, that would be nice. We often hear people talk about the Spartan experience, and while all of us Spartans can understand what that means, we also know that there are many, countless Spartan experiences. MSU means different things to different people. So can you share what inspires you about MSU in a sentence or two?
Honestly, this. Just being surrounded by amazing, independent, strong, smart women is what inspires me to do this. I didn't come from a family my mom never worked. She raised us, me and my brothers, and I'm the youngest of two older brothers, both of them doing great right now. And they are the ones, and my dad also, they were the ones that keep encouraging me every single day and push me to do more and be more, because they know my potential. So it's hard sometimes to think as a woman what my career is going to look like when I have a family eventually one day. But I can see a lot of women here who have families and who have made it. So I think we can make it too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have two things. One is how collaborative MSU is. Now, like, grad school can be very isolating sometimes, but I don't think I know a single person in my cohort who isn't working across labs, whether that's in MSU or outside of the university, at other university labs. And increasingly, graduate students are even now being co-advised, which was like unheard of probably like 10 years ago. So those collaborations have been really inspiring. And then two, just hearing what Paris said earlier of how equal women to men are in all the different departments. I did not realize that about MSU. That's really incredible.
I think I'd echo Christina here and say that the people here really inspire me. I'll give a very short story because I will give a very fast answer. But when I was rotating at MSU, I went to a professor who had just freshly come from Cornell University. And I remember putting together a department presentation for one of our weekly seminars. And she looked at it and she said, "Oh, don't include that data. I don't know who we can trust here at this department yet." And I remember looking at her and saying, you don't have to worry about that here at MSU. Like, we are not those people. And every day I'm so grateful for that. Really, the culture at MSU is a network of people who are here to support you. And I've never once felt like I needed to hide something for someone. I couldn't go to somebody else other than my PI in the department for help or support or advice. And I think that's something that makes MSU so rich in its education, because we're truly a network of people who care about each other rather than, a bunch of scientists working together. We are a bunch of scientists working together, but we're a bunch of people working together. And I think that's something that makes us really special.
Excellent. Well, I have one final prompt for you all to respond to, and I think it really encapsulates this notion of investing in our future, women in philanthropy. We are here today with this extraordinary group of Spartan women dedicated to making a difference at Michigan State. We all know that philanthropic support is crucial for higher education, generating new knowledge and our ability to address some of the world's most pressing problems. You've each shared your journey and how the support of others has been an integral part of your success. So, how would you like to give back? But more importantly, how would you encourage others to support their fellow Spartans in the cause of giving back to the green and white?
So the first thing that comes to mind, like working in a lab, is mentoring the next graduate student behind you, or even summer REUs or research experience opportunities, undergraduates, is a huge thing at Michigan State. Like each department has like almost a unique REU program. And so I've mentored like many summer undergraduates, and that's how I got interested. Like that's how I knew I wanted to go to grad school, was doing those summer internships as an undergraduate. So when you're paving the road in front of you, you know, helping the people behind you, not closing those doors, but like, hey, I've made it a little easier. Like, come on up behind me. So that's how I think. That's how I think when I'm in a lab of how to give back.
I'd absolutely agree with that. Just being present and being the example for people to follow. So for a context, I coach a middle school track team in my free time just for fun. And one day the girls asked me, you know, what do I do with, you know, for my job? And I told them I'm a research scientist. And one of the girls said, oh my gosh, I've never met a scientist before. You know, me, of course, that inflates my ego. So I said, oh, I am a scientist, of course. But it was really cool to be that example for people. So being out in the community and getting people into your field and really leading them by example, I think is a really cool way to give back, is just to set that example for people to say, okay, I see someone who can do it. I can do it too.
Yeah, definitely. Everything you said was on point. I have had the opportunity to mentor 5 undergraduate students so far in my lab, and they have all been 5 young women, which is incredible. Just seeing the sparkle in their eye when an experiment works, when they see cells under the microscope for their first time, when it clicks in their mind and they start understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it. It's just amazing. And then having them grow in the lab and the research, having them go out and present their research, and then coming to me after a weekend telling me, oh, I told my aunt so-and-so about what I'm doing. And I showed them pictures of the cells. That's just so rewarding. And I can't wait to do that in the future, even though I might end up not staying in academia. Whether it's through service, whether it's through money, whether it's through advertising or talking about research to younger adults, I can't wait to do that.
Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences in such candid, eloquent, and thoughtful ways. Will everyone please join me in giving them a hearty round of applause?
We probably have time for 2 questions. So I think we have one here in the front.
Thank you for this and sharing your experiences. My name is Deb Feltz. I spent my career in kinesiology. I was major professor of a number of PhD students, master's degree students as well. And your experiences and the fellowships that you received sound like they were awarded based on qualitative as well as quantitative efforts. I found in terms of being the major professor for a number of students that in the past, and I guess my question is, has it changed? In the past, it was based on a lot of quantitative measures, and I had one student who didn't get MSU Distinguished Fellowship, is now president of a prestigious college. And I've had others who did have these incredible GRE scores, and it didn't work out. They didn't have they were great in the classroom, but what it took to think critically, work as part of a team, and those kinds of things that don't come through those metrics of the best. And so have the metrics for the best changed to include more qualitative criteria, like the impact that a student wants to make after she's through with her degree, as you have the difference that you want to make in the world.
I can start with just a brief comment and then pass it to our panelists. The answer to the question is yes, things have changed. Graduate programs at Michigan State have embraced more notions of holistic admissions, where we're not just concerned with numbers, scores, and grades. And in fact, I would argue anecdotally that more than 50% of the graduate programs have not required GRE scores, just as SAT and ACT scores are not considered at undergraduate admission at the same level. So we're moving towards this more holistic approach. And you're totally right that GRE scores, grades are not the determinants of future success, especially when talking about PhD students. But that's just from the administrative position. I'll pass it to students to offer some different perspectives or maybe cosign, who knows?
No, same perspective. Actually, regarding the GRE, when I was applying to grad school, I was very intimidated by taking the GRE because I don't like these tests. And I remember my PI, my advisor, he told me, don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter that much as long as you pass, because there are more important things that we ask for and we look for. And actually right now, and I passed, and I don't remember, I didn't do that well actually in my GRE, but here I am. I'm right now on the committee for graduate students within my program. So we interview potential graduate students, and almost all of the questions and the presentations that they do are more on who they are, what they have done, what they want to do, what are their future perspectives. We try to ask them questions regarding how they deal with stress. What is their favorite part about research? What is their least likable part about research? So it's, yes, we do look and take into consideration their grades, but it's a lot more than that, because I think when someone's getting into doing a graduate program, they will learn these certain skills. I didn't start off by being the expert in the assays or experiments that I was doing, but I learned throughout the way. But some personal skills, those cannot be learned. There are certain things that require you to have to be in a graduate program that you cannot learn. And back also to the fellowship that I applied for this year and the one that I also got before, they don't ask about anything except for why you're needing the money, what kind of research you're doing, and a letter from your advisor supporting you. So yeah, it has changed a lot for sure.
Yeah, when I was told all I had to do was pass my classes and no one cares about your GPA, I was like, this grad school thing's for me. But in addition to, like MSU, I definitely have gotten the impression that like they want to fund the person, not just the grade, the number on the paper. Thankfully, it also seems like it's changing at the national level. The National Science Foundation fellowship that Pero mentioned, I got, they do have you write up like a research paper that's like 2 pages, but then they want like 3 to 4 pages about like you and your motivations and interests and values. And that's what I was always told about this fellowship. That's like 3 years. It's a very competitive fellowship that like they want to fund the person, not just the project. So that was, that just made me feel so much better about going into grad school. It's a very intimidating process.
I guess I won't say much here because I think we've said quite a bit here, but that really is kind of the growing at the national level idea that these tests aren't actually really indicative of how successful someone can be in a career. And especially something like a PhD where your thesis is so defined by how you think and how you act and how you can react to a situation and or results of an experiment. A GRE or a standardized test just can't quite predict that the same way. That meeting a person and really seeing their passion can be, how can they deal with, setbacks in their research? How do you troubleshoot things? How does your mind adapt to get an answer that you want? And I think MSU specifically, as well as at the national level, we've really started to look for that rather than a test score and a GPA and, a CV type deal.
This is just a quick question for Ursula. What is your home country?
Lebanon.
Lebanon. Okay, thank you. We must have missed that. Thank
Well, thank you. Can we get one more round of applause for Dean Perro and our graduate students? We are going to take a 15-minute break. Well, actually a 14-minute break. We'll return promptly here at 11 o'clock to have Beth Nelson kick us off for a keynote. So stretch your legs, get more coffee, get a little snack, and we'll come back here at 11 o'clock. Thank you.